The crisp breath of early autumn whispered through the dense canopy of the remote forest, where golden leaves tumbled lazily to the mossy floor. Claire Benson, her steps heavy and deliberate, pushed through a tangle of brambles, her hand resting protectively on her rounded belly. At 29, pregnant and alone, Claire's weary legs carried her deeper into the woods, away from the suffocating noise of the city she had escaped. The forest was silent, except for the faint rustle of leaves and the occasional call of a distant bird. It was a solitude she sought, even if it came with uncertainty. Ahead, nestled amid towering pines and firs, stood a weathered cabin, its wooden frame darkened by time and moss. The slanting roof sagged slightly under the weight of years, and the small stone chimney looked as if it hadn't sent smoke skyward in decades. Claire's eyes lingered on the cabin, a flicker of hope sparking in the depths of her tired gaze. Shelter, safety, a place to rest before the cold truly set in. Before we continue, make sure to like and subscribe to never miss a new video. And tell me, where are you watching this video from? I love seeing all different people come together for these stories. The ground was littered with a carpet of amber and rust leaves, muffling her footsteps as she approached the cabin's creaking porch. A single window, clouded with grime, reflected the gray sky and the tangled branches above. The door, swollen with moisture, resisted her push at first, but gave way with a reluctant groan. Inside, the air was cool and musty, a mixture of damp wood, forgotten years, and something faintly sweet like old pine resin. Claire stepped in cautiously, her fingers trailing along the rough-hewn walls, worn smooth by the passage of time. Dust motes floated lazily in the shafts of dim light, filtering through cracks in the weathered boards. The cabin was small, a single room with a crooked stone hearth, a rickety wooden table, and a threadbare blanket draped over a lumpy mattress in the corner. It smelled of abandonment, of quiet stories locked away in silence. She sank onto the mattress, the springs creaking beneath her weight, and closed her eyes, drawing a shaky breath. The ache in her back reminded her sharply of how far she had come, both physically and emotionally. Just days ago, she had been wandering along the city streets, clutching her growing belly, unsure of where to turn. The father of her child had vanished, leaving only cold words and a shattered promise behind. Her family, distant and judgmental, had cut ties. Alone was all she knew now. Gathering what little strength she had left, Claire rose and moved toward the hearth. She swept aside a pile of brittle leaves and debris, searching for kindling. Her fingers brushed against something unexpected, a loose floorboard near the corner beneath the window. The wood creaked faintly beneath her touch, a hollow sound that sent a shiver up her spine. Curiosity and caution warred within her. Was it simply a flaw in the cabin's aging structure, or something more? The floor beneath her fingertips felt weaker, almost as if it concealed a secret. She hesitated, the weight of her pregnancy and exhaustion pressing on her. But the strange sensation lured her closer. Settling back onto the mattress, Claire allowed her mind to drift as the forest outside darkened with the coming dusk. The cabin, despite its eerie stillness, felt like a fragile refuge, a place where she could gather herself before the long winter. She whispered softly to the life growing inside her, promising safety and love, even if it meant starting over from nothing. The silence was broken only by the creak of the cabin settling and the distant rustle of branches. Claire's gaze returned to the floorboard, a knot of unease tightening in her chest. Tomorrow, she told herself, she would pry it open. Tonight, she would rest. As the first stars blinked awake overhead, Claire Benson curled beneath the threadbare blanket, the cabin's shadows wrapping around her like a hesitant embrace. Here, in the heart of the forest, far from the judgments and disappointments of her past, she found a tentative flicker of hope, a chance to begin again beneath the watchful eyes of ancient trees and the whispering wind. Morning light filtered weakly through the grimy window panes, casting pale beams that struggled to breathe life into the dim interior of the cabin. Claire Benson stirred beneath the thin blanket, the chill of dawn creeping into her bones despite the worn fabric. She rose slowly, every movement deliberate and careful, mindful of the growing weight she carried inside her. The small room felt colder now, the silence more pronounced, pressing against her like an unseen weight. She moved toward the hearth, which had long since lost any trace of warmth, and ran her fingers over the cracked stones. The cabin was still, save for the soft creaks and groans of its ancient wood frame shifting with the morning's breath. The air smelled faintly of earth and decay. But beyond that, there was a peculiar stillness that both comforted and unnerved her. Claire busied herself with tidying what little she could. She gathered fallen leaves from the corners, swept dust into a rough pile, and stacked a few dry twigs near the hearth, hoping to coax a fire to life before nightfall. Each small task anchored her, a fragile attempt to impose order on the chaos that had become her life. The cabin was far from home, yet it was the only sanctuary she had found in weeks. Her fingers brushed again against the loose floorboard near the window. The memory of that hollow creak lingered, tugging at her curiosity. She knelt beside it, tracing the edges with a trembling hand. The wood was brittle, aged by years of neglect. But the panel itself seemed oddly out of place, as if it had once been designed to hide something beneath. Her breath caught when the floorboard shifted slightly beneath her touch, a faint squeak escaping the silence. She withdrew her hand, heart pounding. The thought of uncovering a secret here in this forgotten place stirred a mixture of fear and fascination inside her. But the exhaustion that clung to her muscles, the relentless ache in her back, made her hesitate. She wasn't sure she had the strength to pry it open yet. Instead, Claire settled back onto the mattress, the springs groaning under her weight. She folded her arms around her belly, whispering softly to the child inside. "We'll rest here for now," she murmured, voice barely louder than the whispering wind outside. "Tomorrow, I'll be brave." The promise was as much for herself as for the unborn life she protected. Her thoughts swirled with memories and fears. She recalled the moment she discovered she was pregnant, an unexpected shock that upended her carefully guarded independence. The man she had trusted, who had spoken of love and future plans, vanished like a shadow at dawn, leaving behind only silence and unanswered questions. Her family's cold rejection had driven her from their door, pushing her into this wilderness of uncertainty. Claire's mind quietly drifted to the days and weeks that followed, the endless search for a place that could offer both shelter and safety. The city had become a labyrinth of judgment and loneliness, its streets echoing with reminders of what she had lost. Here, amid the towering trees and whispering leaves, the world felt distant, almost suspended in time. Yet, the cabin's silence was not entirely peaceful. Every creak and groan of the old wood seemed amplified in the stillness, stirring unease that settled deep in her bones. The loose floorboard beckoned, a mystery pressing just beneath the surface of her fragile refuge. She imagined what might lie hidden: a forgotten keepsake, a secret stash, or perhaps a remnant of a past life that once called this place home. As the day wore on, Claire made a small fire in the hearth, coaxing smoke from damp twigs with careful patience. The flickering flames cast dancing shadows across the cabin walls, transforming the once cold space into a fragile haven of warmth and light. She sat beside the hearth, fingers wrapped around a chipped mug she had found on a dusty shelf, the heat seeping slowly into her chilled hands. Her thoughts returned to the future, uncertain, daunting, yet tinged with faint hope. She imagined holding her child in these very walls, protecting and nurturing a new beginning, born from the ruins of her past. The cabin, with its creaking floors and whispered secrets, might become more than shelter. It might become home. The afternoon shadows lengthened, and the light outside softened to a muted gold. Claire rose and paced the small room, her footsteps measured and slow. The creak of the loose floorboard beneath her returned, a subtle but persistent sound that seemed to echo in her ears. She stopped and knelt once more, fingers trembling as she tested the edges of the panel. The anticipation was a quiet ache inside her, a mix of fear and longing. She imagined what might lie beneath: a hidden compartment, a secret cache, or even something that could change the course of her stay in this forgotten place. But the weight of exhaustion pulled at her resolve, and she withdrew her hand again, deciding to wait until she felt stronger. As twilight deepened, Claire prepared a simple meal from the scant supplies she had brought: a handful of dried fruit and a crust of stale bread. She ate slowly, savoring the quiet solitude, the absence of judgment, and the fragile peace the cabin offered. Outside, the forest darkened, shadows folding into one another beneath a sky dotted with emerging stars. Later, as she settled once more beneath the thin blanket, Claire allowed herself a moment of reflection. The day had been a tentative step toward rebuilding, a quiet assertion of her will against the flood of uncertainty. The cabin, with its secrets buried just beneath the floor, was a strange and silent companion to her journey. She closed her eyes and whispered again to the child within her, a vow carried on the breath of the night. Tomorrow, we'll find out what's hidden here, together. The promise was a lifeline, a fragile thread of hope woven into the fabric of her weary heart. Outside, the wind stirred the leaves, carrying with it the scent of earth and wood smoke, a quiet reminder that even in the deepest silence, the past waits patiently to be uncovered. And Claire, weary but determined, was ready to listen. The cabin was shrouded in twilight, the weak glow of a fading fire casting long, wavering shadows against the rough wooden walls. Claire Benson sat curled on the threadbare mattress, the soft creak of the springs beneath her the only sound that punctuated the quiet. Her fingers rested gently on her swollen belly, feeling the faint, rhythmic movements of the life growing inside her, a constant reminder of both vulnerability and hope. The stillness around her was a stark contrast to the storm of memories swirling in her mind, memories she had tried to bury beneath layers of exhaustion and determination. Now, with nothing but time and solitude, they rose unbidden, vivid and raw. She closed her eyes and let her thoughts drift back to the moment everything changed. The test, simple, unassuming, had shattered the fragile sense of control she once held. The stark lines on the paper confirmed what her body had whispered for weeks. She was pregnant, alone, with no partner to share the news, no family to lean on, just the cold certainty of a life forever altered. The man she had loved, or thought she loved, had vanished soon after. His promises, his gentle reassurances, dissolved into silence. Calls unanswered, messages ignored. The sting of abandonment cut deep, sharper than she had anticipated. The weight of his absence pressed on her, heavier than the child she carried. Her family, too, had turned away, Their disapproval was a constant echo in her ears, a judgment she could neither escape nor deny. The words left unsaid, the cold glances, the closing of doors, all reminders that she was on her own. In the quiet of the cabin, those wounds throbbed anew. Yet beneath the pain, a fierce determination simmered. Claire was not one to surrender easily. The child inside her was a beacon of hope, a chance to forge a new path, even if it meant walking it alone. She whispered softly, "I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I promise I'll protect you. We'll find a way." Her fingers traced the curve of her belly, drawing comfort from the tiny life stirring within. It was a fragile bond, yet unbreakable in its significance. The thought of the future, uncertain and daunting, both terrified and propelled her forward. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant rain. The forest seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting alongside her. The cabin, with its peeling paint and creaking floorboards, was more than just shelter. It was a witness to her journey, a silent sentinel guarding her fragile hope. Claire's gaze drifted back to the loose floorboard beneath the window. The mystery it held tugged at her curiosity, a puzzle that mirrored the uncertainties within her own life. What secrets lay hidden beneath that worn wood? Could they offer answers, or perhaps a connection to the past that might guide her future? Her fingers itched to pry it open, to uncover what lay concealed. Yet, a cautious voice whispered warnings of exhaustion, of the unknown dangers that might lurk in hidden places. For now she would wait, gathering strength for the moment when she could face the secrets beneath her feet. Memories came unbidden. The cramped apartment where she had lived for months, the nights spent pacing restless floors, the whispered arguments and slammed doors that drove her into the woods. She remembered the nights curled in parks, the ache of loneliness that seeped into her bones, and the moments of unexpected kindness from strangers who offered a smile or a warm drink. Despite it all, Claire had clung to hope. Hope that she could build a life for her child, one filled with love, not judgment, safety, not fear. The creaking of the cabin floor interrupted her reverie. She looked down to see the loose board had shifted again, as if inviting her to unravel its secrets. Her heart quickened, a mixture of anticipation and anxiety tightening in her chest. She rose slowly, the ache in her back a steady companion, and knelt beside the panel. Her fingers traced the edges, feeling the rough grain beneath her skin. The wood was fragile, worn thin by time, but stubbornly intact. Her breath caught when a faint draft slipped through a narrow gap, carrying with it the scent of old paper and earth. The cabin's silence seemed to deepen, as if holding its breath along with her. Claire hesitated, then pressed her palms against the board, lifting gently. The panel gave way with a soft creak, revealing a shallow cavity beneath the floor. Inside lay a small, dust-coated box, its surface worn and stained with age. A rush of questions flooded her mind. Who had left this here? What stories did it hold? Was it a relic of the cabin's past inhabitants, or something more personal? Her fingers trembled as she reached for the box, brushing away decades of dust. The wood was smooth beneath her touch, carved with delicate patterns faded by time. She lifted the lid, the hinges protesting softly. Inside, she found a collection of yellowed letters tied with a faded ribbon, a handful of black and white photographs, and a small leather-bound journal. The edges of the papers were brittle, the ink smudged, but still legible. Claire's breath hitched as she lifted the journal, feeling the weight of history in her hands. The first page bore a name, Evelyn, a woman whose life had been etched into these fragile pages long before Claire had ever set foot in the cabin. As she opened the journal, words spilled forth like a whispered confession. Evelyn's story unfolded in delicate script, a tale of struggle, resilience, and hope. A single mother in the 1940s, fighting against the odds in a world that had little mercy for women alone with children. Claire read late into the fading light, drawing strength from Evelyn's courage. The parallels between their lives were unmistakable. The loneliness, the uncertainty, the fierce determination to protect a child at all costs. In that small cabin, two lives separated by decades converged through shared stories of survival and hope. Claire felt a quiet kinship with Evelyn, as if the past had reached out to cradle her in its enduring embrace. She closed the journal gently, a newfound resolve kindling in her heart. The cabin was no longer just a refuge. It was a bridge between past and present, a place where hope could take root. As night settled over the forest, Claire sat by the hearth, the fragile glow of a candle illuminating the pages she had read. The shadows danced on the walls, weaving stories old and new. She whispered to the child inside her, "We are not alone. There is strength here, strength we will carry forward." Outside, the wind sighed through the trees, carrying with it the promise of tomorrow, and the secrets yet to be uncovered beneath the creaking floorboards. The dawn seeped cautiously through the cabin's grimy windows, casting a pale, uncertain light across the floorboards. Claire Benson sat cross-legged near the hearth, the worn journal resting on her lap, its fragile pages now filled with Evelyn's whispered memories. The morning air was thick with a quiet anticipation, as if the cabin itself held its breath, waiting for the next secret to be revealed. Her fingers lingered on the edges of the small box she had found beneath the loose floorboard, the faded ribbon of letters still tied carefully, as if preserving a lifetime of stories. Today, the urge to delve deeper was irresistible. The mystery beneath the cabin's floor called to her, a silent promise of answers and perhaps a connection to something greater than her own struggles. With a steadying breath, Claire untied the ribbon, the brittle paper rustling softly as she unfolded the first letter. The ink, faded but still legible, revealed the voice of Evelyn, a woman who had lived decades before, whose life had been etched in the margins of history and forgotten by time. The letter spoke of hardship and hope, of nights spent cradling a newborn beneath the same creaking roof Claire now occupied. Evelyn wrote of a love lost, of judgment cast by a world less forgiving, and of her fierce determination to protect her child against all odds. Each word resonated deeply, threading a fragile bond between two women separated by years but united by circumstance. As Claire read, the cabin seemed to breathe alongside her, the silence broken only by the occasional creak of settling wood and the distant call of a morning bird. The letters unfolded like a tapestry, weaving a story rich with pain and perseverance, fear and courage. When she reached the bottom of the last letter, Claire's eyes were damp with unshed tears. The weight of Evelyn's journey settled heavily in her chest, a reminder that she was not alone in her fears, nor in her fight. Her gaze drifted back to the box, and with trembling hands, she lifted the leather-bound journal. Its pages were yellowed and delicate, yet the handwriting was clear, filled with Evelyn's reflections and daily struggles. Claire traced the ink with reverence, feeling the pulse of a life lived with quiet dignity. Suddenly, a subtle sound pulled her attention, the faint creak of the floorboards near the window. Her heart quickened. The loose panel beneath her feet had shifted again, as if stirred by the secrets she was uncovering. A shiver ran down her spine, half from the chill in the cabin, half from the awareness that she was not alone in this moment. Summoning her courage, Claire rose and moved toward the window, her footsteps soft against the worn floor. The forest outside was alive with the gentle rustling of leaves and the golden light of morning filtering through branches. Yet, behind that serene facade, unease prickled at her skin. She knelt beside the loose floorboard, fingers slipping beneath the edge to test its movement. As she lifted the panel further, a faint draft escaped from the cavity below, carrying with it the scent of earth and forgotten years. Beneath the opening, a dark hollow yawned, a hidden trapdoor she had not yet fully explored. Her pulse quickened with a mixture of fear and curiosity. What lay beyond? Was it another relic of Evelyn's past? Or something more immediate, more dangerous? The cabin's silence seemed to deepen, as if warning her to proceed with caution. Claire retrieved a slender, rusted nail from a nearby pile of debris and used it to pry the trapdoor's edges, the wood protesting with soft groans. Slowly, the door creaked open, revealing a narrow, dust-choked stairwell descending into darkness. A faint, musty smell rose from the depths, mingling with the scent of damp earth and decay. Claire hesitated, the weight of her pregnancy pressing down on her resolve. Yet the pull of the unknown was irresistible. She retrieved a battered flashlight from her small bag and clicked it on, the beam cutting through the darkness below. The steps were narrow and steep, worn smooth by time and footsteps long gone. Taking a deep breath, Claire began her descent, each careful footfall stirring motes of dust into the stale air. The stairwell opened into a cramped stone cellar, its walls cold and damp to the touch. The beam of light revealed scattered objects, a rusted lantern, broken pottery shards, and in the far corner, a wooden crate sealed with heavy iron bands. Claire's heart pounded as she approached the crate, the air thick with the scent of age and secrets. The crate bore no markings, but the iron bands were secured with a small, rusted padlock. She examined it closely, the metal corroded but still intact. Her mind raced with possibilities. What had been hidden here? Supplies? Personal belongings? Or something far more precious? Determined, she searched the cellar for anything that might help her open the lock. Her fingers found a bent nail, and with careful effort, she worked at the rusted mechanism. Minutes stretched into an eternity as she wiggled and pried, the lock finally giving way with a soft snap. Claire lifted the lid, the wood creaking protestingly. Inside lay a collection of worn, leather-bound books, tied bundles of faded papers, and a small, intricately carved wooden box. The air seemed charged with the weight of history, the promise of stories long buried but not forgotten. She opened the wooden box with trembling hands, revealing a delicate silver locket nestled in faded velvet. The locket was tarnished but exquisitely crafted, its surface etched with floral patterns and initials entwined. E.M. A fragile photograph slipped from inside the locket, its edges curled and worn. It was a portrait of a young woman, eyes bright with quiet strength, her gaze steady and unyielding. Claire's breath caught. Evelyn's voice, her story, was no longer confined to words on pages, but lived in these tangible relics. Tokens of a life endured, a past preserved. As she gently closed the locket and placed it back in the box, Claire felt a profound connection ripple through her. The cabin, once a place of solitude and mystery, had become a bridge across time, linking her to a woman whose struggles and hopes mirrored her own. The afternoon light waned as Claire ascended the stairs, the weight of discovery settling on her shoulders. She carried the box and journal carefully, setting them on the table beside the hearth. Her hands trembled, a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. Sitting down, she traced the worn edges of the journal and locket, feeling the presence of Evelyn's enduring spirit. The cabin no longer felt empty. It was alive with stories, with history, with the resilience of women who had faced the unknown and chosen to survive. Claire whispered softly to the child within her, "We're not just surviving. We're part of something greater. We'll carry their strength forward." Outside, the wind stirred the trees, carrying with it the whispered secrets of the past and the quiet promise of new beginnings. In the heart of the forest, beneath creaking floorboards and fading light, Claire Benson found a hidden legacy, a thread of hope woven through time, waiting to be unraveled. Claire sat by the flickering hearth, the soft glow of the fire casting dancing shadows over the worn wooden walls of the cabin. Before her lay the leather-bound journal she had discovered beneath the loose floorboard, its fragile pages yellowed with age, ink fading but still legible. The delicate silver locket rested gently beside it, a tangible link to the woman whose story was now entwined with her own. With a trembling hand, Claire opened the journal once more, eager to delve deeper into Evelyn's world. The handwriting was elegant yet hurried, each word a glimpse into a life shaped by hardship and resilience. As she read, the cabin around her seemed to dissolve, transporting her to a time long past, where Evelyn's voice echoed softly through the years. Evelyn's entries painted a vivid portrait of a young woman navigating the challenges of single motherhood during the 1940s. Her words spoke of quiet determination, the weight of societal judgment, and the fierce love that propelled her forward despite overwhelming odds. Claire felt a kinship growing with Evelyn, their lives linked by shared struggles and hopes. One passage caught Claire's breath. "The nights are long and cold, but my child's warmth is a fire that never dims. The world may cast its stones, but I will shield this light with all I have. Tomorrow is uncertain, but I hold onto hope like a lifeline." Claire's fingers traced the words reverently, absorbing the strength woven into each sentence. She imagined Evelyn sitting by a similar fire, writing these words with tired hands but an unyielding spirit. The parallels between their lives were striking: the isolation, the fear, the fierce resolve to protect a child against the world's cruelty. As she turned the pages, Evelyn's story unfolded with increasing detail. There were mentions of neighbors offering whispered kindnesses, moments of despair softened by small acts of grace, and the relentless struggle to find a place to call home. Claire's heart ached with empathy, understanding the loneliness that came with being both vulnerable and brave. Interspersed among the journal entries were faded photographs, black and white images of a young woman with determined eyes, a small child wrapped in worn blankets, and a modest cabin nestled among trees that looked remarkably like the one Claire now inhabited. Each image was a testament to lives lived quietly but profoundly. Claire paused, her mind swirling with questions. Who had Evelyn been beyond these pages? What had become of her child? The journal hinted at hardships yet to come, but the story was incomplete, trailing off into fragments and faded ink. Driven by curiosity, Claire sifted through the letters tied with the faded ribbon, each one a window into Evelyn's world. They were correspondence with a distant relative, a sister perhaps, filled with updates on daily life, pleas for understanding, and reflections on the challenges of motherhood in a time that offered little support. One letter described a day when Evelyn ventured into town, braving judgmental glances and whispered rumors to secure supplies for her child. Another spoke of a quiet victory, finding a small garden patch where she could grow vegetables to sustain them through the winter. The resilience woven through these words bolstered Claire's own resolve. As the hours slipped away, Claire found herself immersed in Evelyn's narrative, drawing strength from the woman who had walked this path before her. The cabin, once a silent and empty refuge, now felt alive with stories of survival and hope. Her thoughts drifted back to her own uncertain future. The fear and loneliness she carried were tempered by a growing sense of connection, a realization that she was part of a lineage of women who had faced adversity with courage. Evelyn's words were a beacon, illuminating a path forward. Claire reached the final entry in the journal, a heartfelt reflection penned in a shaky hand. Though the road ahead is fraught with shadows, I will not let despair take root. My child's laughter is a promise of dawn, a testament to the strength we carry within. May this journal find a kind heart, and may our story remind others that even in the darkest times, hope endures. Tears welled in Claire's eyes as she closed the journal gently, the weight of those words settling deep within her. Evelyn's story was more than history. It was a legacy of resilience, a quiet rebellion against the forces that sought to diminish her. The cabin's silence wrapped around Claire like a comforting embrace, the flickering flames mirroring the flicker of hope kindling within her. She lifted the silver locket, its cool surface a tangible reminder of the woman who had come before. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the scent of earth and distant rain. Claire's gaze drifted to the window, where the forest stretched endlessly, a tapestry of shadows and light. She whispered softly to the child within her, "We're not alone. We carry their strength with us." The weight of Evelyn's story settled into Claire's bones, a steady pulse of courage and determination. The cabin was no longer just a shelter. It was a sanctuary of shared strength, a place where past and present intertwined. With renewed resolve, Claire rose and began tidying the cabin, preparing it not just as a refuge for herself and her child, but as a vessel for stories waiting to be told. She gathered the letters, photographs, and journal, arranging them carefully on the rickety table, a testament to the enduring power of hope. As twilight deepened, Claire sat once more by the hearth, the flickering firelight casting long shadows. Her fingers lingered on the journal's cover, and she felt a quiet promise take root. The promise to honor Evelyn's legacy by embracing her own journey with courage. Outside, the forest held its breath, the secrets beneath the creaking floorboards waiting patiently to be uncovered. And Claire, with the strength of 2 generations guiding her, was ready to face whatever lay ahead. Days slipped by in quiet rhythm, the forest outside the cabin shifting slowly from the amber hues of autumn toward the first whispers of winter. Claire Benson moved through the small space with a growing sense of purpose, her steps lighter despite the ever-present ache in her back. The stories she had uncovered beneath the floorboards had woven themselves into the fabric of her days, transforming the cabin from a mere shelter into a sanctuary where past and present met. Each morning, she woke to the soft chorus of birdsong and the cool breath of dawn filtering through the windows. She had begun to clean the cabin methodically, sweeping away years of dust and neglect, patching small holes in the walls with remnants of old cloth and plaster, and arranging the sparse furnishings with care. The act of tending to the cabin was more than practical. It was a ritual of reclaiming stability, of crafting a space worthy of the new life she carried. Claire's hands were calloused from scrubbing the rough surfaces, but her heart felt lighter with every sweep of the broom. She planted a small garden patch just beyond the porch, inspired by Evelyn's words of finding hope in the soil. With careful attention, she tended to a few hardy herbs and vegetables, imagining the day when she could cook fresh meals for her child beneath the sheltering branches. The journal and letters remained her constant companions. Each night, she read more of Evelyn's story, drawing strength from the woman's resilience. The parallels between their lives were striking. and Claire found solace in the idea that she was not forging a path alone, but walking alongside a sister in spirit. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky with strokes of gold and crimson, Claire paused on the porch, cradling her belly and breathing in the crisp air. The cabin, once silent and foreboding, had begun to hum with quiet life. A refuge not just for her, but for the future she dared to envision. Inside, the small hearth crackled softly, the warmth a balm against the encroaching chill. Claire sat by the fire, her fingers tracing the worn leather cover of Evelyn's journal. The words within had become a lifeline, a testament to enduring hope in the face of uncertainty. She spoke softly to the child inside her. "You carry the strength of those who came before you. Together, we will grow." The days were not without their challenges. The isolation weighed heavily at times, shadows of doubt creeping into her thoughts. Yet, each morning brought renewed determination. Claire began to prepare for the coming winter, gathering firewood stacked neatly by the cabin's side and mending tattered blankets to shield against the cold. Her dreams shifted in the quiet hours, visions of Evelyn's life mingling with her own hopes and fears. She imagined the young mother navigating a world that often seemed hostile, finding moments of grace amid hardship. The connection to Evelyn's story became a source of courage, a reminder that even in the darkest times, resilience could bloom. One evening, as the wind whispered through the trees and the stars emerged like distant lanterns, Claire sat by the window, penning her own thoughts in a small notebook she had found among her belongings. Writing became a new way to process the whirlwind of emotions, the fear, the hope, the quiet resolve. She wrote of the cabin's transformation from a place of refuge to a home, of the strength she found in Evelyn's words, and of the future she imagined for her child. The act of writing was both cathartic and empowering, a step toward reclaiming her story. The community beyond the forest began to feel less distant as well. Claire had ventured into the nearby town on rare occasions, gathering supplies and cautiously reaching out to those who offered kindness rather than judgment. She met an elderly woman at the general store who shared stories of the area's history and spoke gently of Evelyn's family, hinting at connections Claire had yet to uncover. These encounters, though brief, planted seeds of hope for a future beyond solitude, a possibility of belonging and support. Claire felt the stirrings of a new chapter, one where her child would grow not just in the shelter of the cabin, but within a community that understood the strength born from hardship. Back in the cabin, Claire carefully preserved Evelyn's journal and letters, placing them in a sturdy box she had fashioned from reclaimed wood. She envisioned one day sharing these stories, honoring the legacy of a woman whose courage had become a beacon in her own journey. The garden outside took root, small green shoots breaking through the earth as a symbol of renewal. Claire tended it with patience and care, whispering promises of growth and life to the soil beneath her fingers. As winter approached, the cabin stood resilient against the biting winds, a testament to the passage of time and the enduring spirit of those who had called it home. Claire wrapped herself in layered blankets, the fire's glow reflecting in her eyes as she contemplated the path ahead. She knew the challenges were far from over. The unknowns still loomed large, and the journey to motherhood was just beginning. But within her heart, a quiet flame burned steady, fueled by the stories of the past and the hope of the future. One night, as snowflakes began to drift lazily outside the window, Claire whispered to her unborn child, "We are ready. Together, we will face whatever comes." The cabin, once a place of solitude and mystery, had blossomed into a haven of resilience and hope. And as the world outside slipped into winter's embrace, Claire Benson embraced the promise of new beginnings, her spirit intertwined with the legacy of strength she had uncovered beneath the creaking floorboards. The night settled over the forest with a heavy, almost suffocating stillness, broken only by the faint crackling of the fire within the cabin. Claire Benson sat close to the hearth, her breath steady despite the uneasy knot tightening in her chest. The past days had been a delicate dance of hope and preparation. But tonight, an unfamiliar tension prickled beneath the surface of her newfound peace. Earlier that afternoon, while gathering water from the nearby stream, she had noticed subtle signs. Footprints pressed into the soft earth, fresh and deliberate, circling the perimeter of the cabin. At first, she had dismissed them as the wanderings of a curious animal. But then she spotted a discarded cigarette butt, its filter stained and crushed, lying near the edge of the underbrush. Someone had been here, watching perhaps, or searching for something. Now, as shadows deepened and the forest seemed to close in around her, Claire's senses sharpened. The creaks and groans of the old cabin, once familiar and comforting, now echoed with a disquieting resonance. Each rustle beyond the window sent a flicker of alarm racing through her veins. She rose slowly, moving to the small window that overlooked the thinning trees. The moonlight cast pale silver across the forest floor, illuminating faint shapes and shifting shadows. Claire's eyes scanned the darkness, seeking any sign of movement, any hint of the unknown presence that had disturbed her solitude. A sudden snap of a twig sent her heart pounding, muscles tensing as she reached for the worn hunting knife tucked beneath her blanket. The weapon was more a talisman than a tool, but in her hands, it felt like a fragile shield against the encroaching fear. The cabin's silence was broken by a soft knock, a hesitant, almost tentative tapping at the weathered door. Claire's breath caught. She hesitated, torn between caution and the desperate need for connection that had driven her to this remote refuge. "Who's there?" she called softly, voice steady despite the tremor within. The knock came again, slightly firmer this time. Claire moved cautiously to the door, peering through the cracked window pane to see a man standing just beyond the porch, his face partially obscured by the hood of a worn jacket. His eyes, dark and searching, met hers with an intensity that unsettled her. "I'm sorry to startle you," he said, voice low but earnest. "My name's Thomas. I'm a descendant of the cabin's original owner. I've been looking for this place for years." Claire's mind raced. The cabin's history had become a lifeline, a connection to a woman named Evelyn, whose story had mirrored her own. Could this man be linked to that past? Or was he another unknown, a threat she could not afford to ignore? "Why are you here?" she asked, keeping her voice calm but wary. Thomas shifted uncomfortably, glancing down at the ground before meeting her gaze again. "I heard from local folks that someone had been staying here. I wanted to make sure you're safe, and to ask about some family heirlooms that might be here." Claire's thoughts flickered to the box she had found beneath the floor, the journal, letters, and the silver locket. She hadn't told anyone about them, unsure of what they might mean or how they could change her fragile sense of security. "I'm alone," she said quietly. "I'm just trying to find a place to rest." Thomas nodded slowly, his expression softening. "I understand. I'm not here to cause trouble. My family's history is tangled with this cabin. I was hoping to learn more, and maybe find some things that were lost." Claire weighed the truth in his words against the caution etched deep within her. After a long moment, she opened the door wider, gesturing him inside. "Come in," she said. "But please understand, I'm wary. I've had little kindness lately." Thomas stepped inside, removing his hood and revealing a face marked by years of hard living but framed with a gentle sincerity. The cabin, small and humble, seemed to breathe with new life as he looked around, eyes lingering on the worn furniture and the hearth where a fire still glowed softly. "I can see why you'd want to stay here," he said quietly. "There's something special about this place." Claire nodded, settling back onto the mattress. "It's more than just shelter now. It's a connection to a past I'm just beginning to understand." Thomas smiled faintly, reaching into his jacket to pull out a small notebook filled with faded photographs and scribbled notes. "My grandmother told me stories about Evelyn, her strength, her struggles. I never thought I'd find the cabin or meet someone living here." They spoke late into the night, sharing pieces of history and hope. Thomas revealed fragments of family lore, tales of resilience, loss, and the enduring bonds of blood and memory. Claire shared her own story cautiously, the fear and hope mingling in her words. As the fire dwindled to glowing embers, a fragile alliance took root between them. Thomas offered to help preserve the cabin and protect its secrets, while Claire found in him a tentative ally amid the isolation. Yet, beneath the surface, the uncertainty lingered. Questions hovered like shadows. What had drawn Thomas here after so many years? Was he truly a descendant seeking to honor the past? Or was there more at stake? And what of the others? Those who might still be searching for the hidden box or the secrets it contained. The night held its breath, the forest outside silent but watchful. Claire felt the weight of the unknown pressing against her fragile sanctuary. Yet within her, a flicker of courage burned brighter. She looked at Thomas, her voice steady despite the lingering tension. "We'll face this together. For the past, for the future." Outside, the wind stirred the branches, carrying with it the whispered promise of challenges yet to come, and the fragile hope of unexpected alliances forged in the heart of the forest. The days that followed Thomas's arrival unfolded with a cautious rhythm, the cabin humming quietly with the presence of two lives tentatively intertwining. Claire found herself navigating a delicate balance between guarded trust and the relief of companionship. The forest outside remained indifferent, its ancient trees whispering secrets only the wind could understand. But within the cabin walls, a fragile community was beginning to form. Thomas proved to be more than just a bearer of family history. He was a steady hand in the face of uncertainty. Together, they worked to restore the cabin, reinforcing the worn floorboards and sealing cracks that let in cold drafts. With his knowledge of the area and her determination, the small space transformed slowly from a refuge into a home. A sanctuary not just of wood and stone, but of shared purpose. Claire found comfort in his company, the weight of loneliness lifting just enough to allow hope to take root. Their conversations often drifted to the past, weaving stories of Evelyn and her struggles as a single mother, the hardships etched into the walls of the cabin like silent witnesses. Thomas shared family anecdotes passed down through generations, painting a vivid picture of a woman whose quiet courage had shaped the land they now inhabited. The local community, once a distant and intimidating presence, began to extend tentative hands of support. Thomas introduced Claire to a few townsfolk, neighbors who remembered Evelyn's name and spoke kindly of the family's legacy. They offered small gifts, a basket of fresh eggs, a bundle of firewood, a warm quilt stitched with care. These gestures, though simple, spoke volumes, breaking through the walls of isolation Claire had built around herself. As the weeks passed, Claire's pregnancy progressed steadily, the child within her growing stronger with each passing day. Thomas proved invaluable, accompanying her on trips to the nearest town to gather supplies and offering reassurance when doubts clouded her mind. Their partnership, born out of necessity and curiosity, blossomed into something more profound, a chosen family forged in the crucible of shared experience. One crisp morning, as frost kissed the edges of the cabin's windows, Claire and Thomas sat together on the porch, wrapped in blankets and sipping steaming cups of tea. The garden Claire had planted earlier in the season lay dormant beneath a thin veil of white, yet the promise of spring lingered in the sharpness of the air. "I never imagined this place could feel like home," Claire said softly, her gaze drifting toward the skeletal branches of the trees surrounding them. Thomas nodded, his breath forming small clouds in the cold air. "It's more than just a cabin now. It's a legacy. Yours and Evelyn's and mine. We're part of something bigger." Claire smiled, the warmth of his words seeping into her bones. "I want to honor that legacy, to tell our stories so others know they're not alone." Together, they began to devise a plan to preserve Evelyn's story alongside their own. They cataloged the letters, photographs, and journal entries, carefully digitizing the fragile documents to protect them from further decay. Claire started drafting a memoir, weaving her experiences with Evelyn's words, creating a tapestry of resilience that spanned generations. The local library agreed to host a small exhibit, showcasing the artifacts and stories uncovered in the cabin. The event promised to bring the community together, fostering understanding and support for women like Claire and Evelyn, those who had faced adversity with quiet strength. As preparations for the exhibit moved forward, Claire felt a growing sense of purpose. The cabin, once a place of solitude and hidden secrets, had become a beacon of hope and connection. It was a place where stories could be shared, wounds could begin to heal, and futures could be imagined without fear. One evening, as twilight settled over the forest, Claire stood on the porch, her hands resting gently on her belly. The stars blinked into existence above, their light weaving through the branches like silver threads. Thomas approached quietly, standing beside her in comfortable silence. Together, they watched as the night embraced the cabin, the world beyond fading into a tapestry of shadow and light. "We're ready," Claire whispered, her voice steady and filled with conviction, "for whatever comes next." Thomas smiled, the weight of the past and the promise of the future reflected in his eyes. "We face it together." The cabin, bathed in moonlight, stood resilient, a testament to the power of kindness, the strength of chosen family, and the enduring legacy of those who dare to hope. Within its walls, the stories of Evelyn and Claire intertwined, a living bridge between past and present, guiding the way toward a brighter tomorrow. The first light of dawn spilled softly over the cabin's weathered roof, casting a gentle glow that seeped through the cracks in the wooden walls. Claire Benson stirred beneath a patchwork quilt, the familiar ache of pregnancy mingling with a new sense of purpose that had taken root deep within her spirit. The cabin, once a silent refuge, now thrummed with life. Her life, and the echo of stories passed down through generations. She rose carefully, the baby's gentle movements a steady rhythm beneath her fingertips, and moved to the small desk where her notebook lay open. The pages were filled with her thoughts, reflections, and fragments of the memoir she had begun drafting, a tapestry woven from Evelyn's words and her own experiences. Writing had become both sanctuary and strength, a way to give voice to the silent struggles of women like them. The past months had transformed Claire in ways she had never anticipated. The fear that once gripped her heart had softened, replaced by a quiet confidence nurtured by the support of the community and the companionship of Thomas. Together, they had built more than a home. They had forged connections that bridged time and circumstance. Today, she planned to visit the local library, where the exhibit of Evelyn's story was set to open. The thought stirred a mix of excitement and nerves. Sharing such intimate histories was daunting, but Claire knew it was necessary to honor the past and inspire others who might walk similar paths. Outside, the garden Claire had planted began to stir with the promise of spring. Tender shoots peeked through the soil, fragile yet determined. The earth beneath her feet was a reminder that growth was possible, even after the harshest winters. As she prepared to leave, Thomas appeared in the doorway, his presence steady and reassuring. He offered a warm smile, his eyes reflecting shared hopes and unspoken understanding. "Ready?" he asked softly. Claire nodded, gathering her coat and the carefully wrapped box containing the journal and letters. "Let's go." The walk to town was brisk, the air filled with the scent of blooming wildflowers and fresh earth. The forest gradually gave way to the familiar streets of the small community, where faces greeted them with a mixture of curiosity and kindness. At the library, a modest crowd had gathered, locals who had heard whispers of the exhibit and others drawn by the promise of a story untold. Claire's heart quickened as she stepped inside, the weight of anticipation settling over her. The exhibit was simple yet poignant. Photographs, letters, and artifacts carefully arranged to tell Evelyn's story alongside Claire's own journey. Visitors moved slowly through the space, their expressions shifting from curiosity to empathy as they absorbed the narratives woven together. Claire stood beside Thomas, watching as people lingered over the worn leather-bound journal, the silver locket, and the faded photographs. Whispers of recognition and admiration rippled through the room, a testament to the power of shared history. A woman approached, her eyes bright with tears. "Your story. It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing." Claire smiled, the warmth of connection filling the space between them. "It's not just my story. It belongs to all of us who have faced hardship and found strength." Throughout the day, Claire spoke with visitors, women who had faced similar challenges, families touched by Evelyn's legacy, and young mothers seeking hope. Each conversation reinforced the importance of visibility, of breaking silence to foster understanding and support. As the sun dipped low, casting golden hues through the library windows, Claire felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The journey from isolation to community had been arduous, but it had forged a path illuminated by compassion and resilience. Returning to the cabin, the evening air cool against her skin, Claire paused on the porch, gazing at the stars emerging one by one. The forest around her was alive with the songs of night creatures, a symphony of life continuing despite the weight of history. Thomas joined her silently, his presence a comforting anchor. Together, they breathed in the stillness, the promise of tomorrow sparkling in the night sky. Inside, the cabin awaited, a vessel of stories and dreams, a home where past and present converged. Claire's fingers brushed the worn journal resting on the table, a symbol of endurance and hope. She whispered to the child within her, "We carry their strength. We will write our own story." The legacy of Evelyn's courage and Claire's determination intertwined, a living testament to the power of resilience and the bonds that transcend time. In the heart of the forest, beneath the watchful stars, a new chapter was unfolding, one filled with promise, connection, and the enduring light of hope. The morning light spilled softly over the forest, filtering through the canopy in gentle streams that dappled the cabin's porch. Claire Benson stood there, wrapped in a warm shawl, her hands resting tenderly on the curve of her belly. The world around her was waking slowly. The rustle of leaves, the distant call of birds, the crisp scent of earth and pine, blending with the promise of new beginnings. She breathed deeply, feeling the steady flutter of life within her, a pulse that echoed the rhythm of the cabin and the stories it held. This place, once silent and shadowed by secrets, had become a cradle of hope and resilience, a home shaped by the hands and hearts of women who had come before, and now by her own. Claire's gaze wandered across the familiar landscape, the garden she had nurtured, now blossoming with the first signs of spring, the sturdy walls of the cabin, weathered but steadfast, the towering trees standing as silent witnesses to her journey. Each element felt like a thread in a tapestry woven from past and present. Grief and healing, fear and courage. Memories stirred gently within her. The discovery of the loose floorboard, the hidden box filled with letters and a journal. The stories of Evelyn's strength and sacrifice. Those pages had been a lifeline, a mirror reflecting her own struggles and illuminating a path forward. Evelyn's voice, carried through time, had whispered to Claire in moments of doubt, reminding her that even in darkness, hope endures. The weight of that legacy settled in her chest, a steady warmth that grounded her as she prepared for the day ahead. The cabin was no longer just a refuge. It was a beacon, a sanctuary for stories yet to be told and lives yet to be lived. With a gentle smile, Claire stepped inside, her fingers tracing the worn wood of the table where she had carefully preserved Evelyn's letters and photographs. Nearby, a small cradle stood ready, its empty space pregnant with possibility. She imagined the day when the child she carried would fill that cradle, their laughter weaving new melodies into the cabin's walls. Her thoughts drifted to the community she had come to know, the neighbors who had extended kindness, the friends who had become family, the quiet understanding that had blossomed from shared histories. The exhibit at the library had been more than an unveiling of artifacts. It had been a celebration of resilience, a testament to the power of connection. Claire wrapped the shawl tighter around her shoulders and moved to the hearth, where the embers still glowed faintly. She knelt beside it, placing a hand over her heart, feeling the steady beat that had carried her through so many nights of uncertainty. She whispered softly, "We've come so far, together." Outside, the wind stirred the branches, carrying the scent of blooming flowers and fresh earth, a reminder that life renews itself in cycles, that endings are but beginnings in disguise. In that moment, Claire felt the intertwining of past and present, the invisible thread that connected her to Evelyn and to the generations of women who had faced hardship with quiet strength. Their stories were etched not only in journals and photographs, but in the very air she breathed and the ground beneath her feet. The cabin, once a place of solitude and secrets, had blossomed into a home filled with laughter, love, and the enduring promise of new life. Claire's journey from fear to hope mirrored the resilience of the forest itself. Rooted, growing, reaching toward the light. As the sun climbed higher, casting golden warmth through the windows, Claire stepped onto the porch once more. She looked out over the land that had become hers, the future unfolding like the petals of a spring bloom. Her voice was steady, filled with quiet determination. "We are ready." The flutter within her grew stronger, a heartbeat intertwined with her own, a living testament to survival, love, and the unbreakable bonds that transcend time. And as Claire Benson stood beneath the vast sky, surrounded by the whispers of the past and the promise of tomorrow, she knew that whatever lay ahead, she would face it with strength drawn from the stories beneath her feet, and the life blossoming within her. The cabin, the forest, and the generations of women who had come before all breathed with her, a legacy of hope carried forward into the dawn of a new day.